Well, good luck with
I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. It is 5:20 p.m. and we'll begin with the roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Nate Bryson, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Patel, Superintendent.
All right. Is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene this session.
Good. Yeah. All right. I'm going to turn the time over to Cliff Strachan, who is part of Provo City, who's going to talk about redistricting.
Thank you. Do you have my slides by chance?
I do.
Okay.
So I took my long set of slides and shortened them up for your meeting. I mean, I only dropped out 3 slides, but anyway, how many were around last time you did redistricting 10 years ago? 8 guys? Okay. So this is my first go around with it for the city as well. And basically, if you want to move, are you moving them forward then? Will you go second slide? So basically, redistricting is redividing the legislative areas based on the census. After 10 years, we didn't move that many in population, but it does tend to have a little bit of a westward shift. I pointed out to the council that the council is the body responsible for setting both the council and school board districts, and there is no requirement stipulated to consider your wishes on it, but there's no reason why they can't either. So just want to make that clear. Next slide. So it applies to all levels of our government. Basically, what happens is the state adopts the maps for the federal government, and then the state government, and then the state school board and all that. And what they tell the counties to do is they have to take these precincts and you have to draw them within certain lines. They try to have between 50 and 1,250 registered voters in every area, but then it ends up being, we end up having to work based on the population. And so there's some really weirdnesses in the precincts, but we did go back as the county was drawing them, made some suggestions on where they make the precincts. So instead of 42 precincts this time, there are 59. They're still, in our mind, some of them are inadequate because of the way they're shaped, but it's what we got stuck with, and so we have to work within those. Redistricting for the school board, next one, requires that you be substantially equal in population, or as contiguous and compact as practicable. You have to do it every 10 years, does not affect the right to complete your term. Addresses of 2+ members have to end up in the same district, and I just checked again to see what it, remind myself what it said. Basically, if 2 of you end up in the same district, you draw lots, one stays in the district, the other gets continues to the end of their term. We have a requirement to send a map to the Utah Geographical something, and the county within 10 days after it's adopted. We got the county to agree to give us an extension to February 17th. That allows them to get the material, send it in, and so you'll be able to, by March 7th, anybody running for school board seats will know what districts they actually will reside in at that point, so there'll be no guessing. And then the state law is that if you already have 7-member boards, you stay at 7-member boards, and there's no provision for at-large. Next slide will show you the chart that we had last time, the map from last time. I mentioned that the precincts have changed. We're using the same map program this time, but let's go to the last slide, and let me just show you a proposed timeline. I will tell you that the council members right now are debating whether or not to stay with 5 set districts and 2 citywides, or to go to 7 or 4 and 3 or 6 and 1, whatever, but they're still trying to decide. If they go to 7 districts, one of the discussions they'll probably have is whether or not to adopt the same map as the school board, or whether to have slightly different ones. And there's some good arguments to be made to have the same. So they may have an interest in what maps come out of this as well. So their interest may not be entirely aligned with yours, but at the end of the day, they do want to try and have maps that are fair and appropriate to our needs. So we've launched this application. We'll show it to you in a few minutes. On January 31st, we'll close those. We'll have, the staff will have about half a day to go through them and print them up and get them to the council members to look at. I'll be sending them to you at the same time, to Derek. Derek, we haven't met in person, so Derek, I'll send them to Derek, and then he can distribute them. Council's going to meet the next day on February 1st, and we'll probably shortlist the maps and then put some out, or maybe we'll put all of them out in the city hall, but we'll try and get some public feedback from them. I don't know when you're going to meet, except that I know you had a meeting on February 8th, so I assumed you would be making some kind of decision. I would suggest that what you do is pick some 2 or 3 maps or 4 maps or whatever, and indicate your preference for them and send them to the council as these are the ones you'd be interested in, you prefer if you want. As I said, they may or may not consider it, but knowing the council, they'll probably consider it. February 15th, they're going to receive public comment on the maps and then adopt the new districts. And then by the 17th, that's a Thursday, we'll have to send them to the county and to that Utah Geographical Resource Center. And then, of course, March 7th, you'll be able to file for your elections, knowing where your district boundaries are. The council, again, is holding back, trying to figure out whether they want to keep the same districts. So I don't know where we're going to intersect with this, or if they, one of the thoughts we've had is if they decide to wait or keep the 5 and 2, we may just wait until everything's done with yours and then start up our process for ours as well, because the council actually has till the middle of May, because there's a 6 months from the time the state sets their boundaries. So that's where we're at with those. Do you have any questions before I show you the application?
I just want to be clear on a couple things real quick.
Please.
To make sure I'm understanding correctly. So we, this does not affect our right to finish our term unless we're drawn out of our area. Then we'll end up in someone else's area, so we literally flip a coin.
Flip a coin, yeah. Okay. And then you can finish your term as an at-large. That's the only way you get to have at-large.
You're turning off other districts until re-election.
Okay, and then what about the one that's left empty?
Someone has to run for that.
Okay, and so this
or however you fill vacant seats.
So they have to be appointed at that point. So we have.
I think you have time. You'll know coming up whether you're going to have a vacancy or not. And so I don't know. You're going to have your legal team figure out what the requirements are for yours. But I will tell you, we were playing with this redistricting application. I'll show it to you in a minute. But when we were playing with it, one of the things we found was I think moving 2 precincts kept your maps almost identical to what they are. And we did the same with the council and moved 1 district and the council stayed where they are. So there's not a whole lot of movement, but there can be. And I know that there's some interest in a west side map and things like that. So can we pull that up? Do you have that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, go to redistricting.provo.org.
Sorry, really quick to
Please.
follow up on that. So someone needs to be appointed, like when this is all done in March, like if I'm drawn out, I'm done, or do I finish the year?
You finish your term.
Unless I'm drawn out of my lines and I don't.
You finish your term. So even according to the code,
You would still have 3 years left.
it says here that in the code, if 2 members whose terms extend beyond the redistricting live within a redistricted school board district, the members involved shall select 1 member by lot to represent that district.
Mm-hmm.
The other members shall serve at large for the remainder of their terms. The at-large members shall serve in addition to the designated number of board members for the board in question for the remainder of the term. So you could have put that possibly end up 8 or 10, depending on how you drew them.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. So no one here is going to be kicked out of here early?
No.
Okay, great.
No. But it's possible that down the road, if you want to run again, you'd have to run against whoever's in that area.
Got it, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I am ending up in a weird, like on these, I'm ending up in a weird spot, and I'm like, I'm gonna be drawn right out of my place, and I'm nervous about it, so, okay.
So, if you pull that up, I'm just going to point, and I'll ask you to click on things. So if you want to scroll up, so basically up here, they've drawn in these green markers. This represents the approximate percentage up and above of the average number of population. And so you take this and you divide it up, and you're somewhere in the 16,000 number for an average. Now, if you go up to each of these districts, you can change the different boxes, and every time you do, these numbers change. If you come down a little bit, so up in here, if you click on a box, it'll tell you the precinct number and the population. And there's some oddities. Scroll back in. And there's some weird ones like this. These are two different districts. I think there's like 3 people live up here. But incidentally, you'll see in a few minutes, I'll show you a map, and if you there's 2 maps that fit, and this one, if you switch them, you can almost keep the same maps you've got. But this one actually has a very small isthmus that joins it. This is 1 precinct. We thought that was a little odd. This one's really weird because the railroad track comes up through here. There's very little population here, lots of population here, but the way the county drew the precincts, this is 1 precinct. So those are the real oddities we weren't happy with. Can you go over to view plans?
This is what's proposed, right?
No.
No, or this is
what's
current.
So let me say, all these plans, people can go in and play with it and submit plans. It won't allow you to submit unless these are equal or roughly equal within the green band. Once you've submitted, it stays in. You name it something, and then if somebody tries to creates exactly the same map, it won't take it because it's already in there. And I think 10 years ago they told me there was something like 42 different maps that came out of it, but not a whole, it's
So these
still
are
more
the-
variability than I thought there would be.
So these aren't current precincts, these are...
No, somebody was playing this, so this is kind of where it is on the site right now. So go over here to view plans, and then scroll this up so you can see. All right, so come down a little bit. So if you click on the balanced school board map, okay, again, this puts all the stuff roughly in balance. It breaks up your districts into 7. If you go up to the 22 school board map, which is a little ways down, right there, click that, and you'll see these 2 change. And otherwise, it's identical. And then somebody wanted to know what if we did west side? So there's at least 3 sides that just put the balance in here. We realized that you could have 1 district, and then it does make it a little more complicated the rest of the city. And there's always pros and cons about identifying, isolating 1 area. And then go up to equal precincts voters. This was another one I just thought was interesting because we were playing on the city map. We were trying to figure out what happens if you shift some of this. And anyway, just you can play, you can add stuff to it, and then people can submit till about noon on the 31st.
That's why I love
So,
it.
and it says nothing about knowing where people live or anything else, but I know every one of you is going to want to know in these various models if you're all in your districts. So, any questions?
So are you guys basically proposing the balanced one?
No. That was just the first one that got added. So
So
we actually did one on the city one before we pulled the city one down, and I think we moved, I think it might have been this district, and it balanced everything from where it was just based on how population changes. But we were just playing with it, and I told my staff that was the only one we submitted, but I told my staff, you can play with it all you want, don't submit anything more, because we want the public to really weigh in.
So, am I understanding right that we can decide as a board what we would want to propose and then formally present it in your February 15th meeting, or somehow formally get it
I would
to you?
suggest you propose it, send us a letter with the map that you want and suggest it. because we're going to want to draft, we're going to probably make a few copies of our legislation because of the way we have to draft the legislation. We have to put, this district is, you know, number, what's that, 5? District 5 is comprised of this and this and this and this and this and this, all by precinct, and so it's cumbersome. So it would be helpful, I think, to get down to 3 or 4 maps that you guys would prefer. And I think it's okay, just don't give us one map and say, this is the only one we'll accept, because that would be, I think politically that would not go well with the residents if you did that. So.
And is there a way we can look up like an overlay? Like I think I know where some of where's Center Street, where's 3rd South, you know, some of those, but just so when we are looking at that, we're clear.
It's harder. Maybe get your GIS guys to work with our GIS guys to figure out some lines. But yeah, one of the things you'll find is the precincts don't always follow what you think would be, you know, natural. I mean, obviously this is University, right? There's the river right through here, but you know, even up here. And so, for instance, these line right here follows the slope on the hill rather than, say, a road.
Cliff, we don't have any GIS guys, so can we go to Phil? And give Phil a call?
Yeah, you could give Phil a call or Stan.
Okay.
Stan, I think, is the one that works in the most, but I think Phil might be in charge over there. But
is there one proposed map that the city leadership is leaning toward being in favor of right now?
no, we haven't even started. They haven't seen any more than you just have. So
Jennifer, I was just showing on there that little upper right-hand box up there. You can put this major street.
Oh, yeah, try
you
that.
can also put your elementary school boundaries,
try that.
high school boundaries on there. There you go.
Okay.
oh, there you go. And then your current district lines.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So then you can go back through and see how, go up to these, this 22 school board map and say, or one of these, and see how it fits your current plan. So still some differences. So, anyway, you can have fun with it, play it, submit something. And please, if you have any additional questions, just email me. My email is cstrachan@provo.org, and I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Is there any further questions for Cliff? All right.
All right.
So as a board, play with this, each of you, and come up with things, and then in our February 8th meeting, we'll make a decision on what one we want, and we'll send it to or at least 3 or 4 that we would be okay with, and send that to them on the February 8th meeting. So, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a construction update, and I'll turn the time over to Mark Wheeler.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Bonnie, with this file that I shared with you, will you start at the bottom 2 slides, and then we'll go back to the top.
I really hated these slides.
Yeah.
I knew it'd make your day. Yeah.
First one.
Go to the very bottom. Well, no, that's good. Start with TIMView. The reason I shared this, I get a lot of questions as other similar projects been around the state, like why are our costs not the same as this high school or this high school? I just wanted to give you a quick visual. This is what our TIMView campus looks like. This is how the phases are divided up. And you've heard over and over for several years our disadvantages are this. It's on a slope. It's expansive soils. It's a very tight site, and we're building it in phases instead of a very simple rebuild that some other projects take. So you can go to that last one, Bonnie. This is an example of what Nebo District is doing with Spanish Fork High School. It's a flat site. They don't have expansive soils, and it's a very simple. They relocated their football field, rebuilt it on the northeast side of campus, and then they've got all this space here on the west side that they will rebuild the entire campus. So they aren't trying to fit a building over here, or renovating this building, or tying this building into some transition with another building. So it's just a quick example of why our prices, they're very unique with TIMView. They don't match any other project because of those challenges. Any questions before I go on to the other details? Okay. Go back to the top of that file, Bonnie. One of our construction management groups shared some data with me this past week. And so I just took some of those details. I wanted to share with you so you can see what's happening and what we're battling on a weekly basis. And if you need the sources for these details too, let me know and I'll share those sources with you. Diesel fuel costs have increased 103% since July of 2020. And you can see my notes on how many areas this impacts. Steel mill products increased 147% since July of 2020. Metal stud framing is an example of that, of the impact. Rebar for concrete reinforcement has been a huge challenge. Steel pipe and tube products, almost 80%. Structural steel costs, 45% since July of 2020 and still climbing. By the way, if we receive a structural steel bid tomorrow, it is only good until the next day. They will not hold their bids. And so it's a really fine balance of having to take a bid by our construction groups and immediately know, okay, we got to go with this group because we've got to get a contract to them within 24 hours. Structural steel is an example of that. Ready mixed concrete. This statistic here is specific to Utah market right now. It's projected to increase 12% during this month of January alone. Gypsum products, drywall, for example, 25%. Lumber started to settle a bit last fall, and now it's doubled since the end of November again. So that continues to be a challenge. Copper for plumbing lines, 52%. I just wanted to give you kind of a quick user-friendly overview of what's happening in the construction market. You go to that next slide, Bonnie. So as you've heard me talk a little bit before about TIMPU, from where we started to now, that construction escalation has taken us from 73 million to 80 million. And again, that's just the construction portion, right? I have not included soft costs or design fees or things like that in that number. That's just construction only. Part of that 80 million number, by the way, includes some good credits in several categories. 150,000 here, 175,000 here. One was a $700,000 credit that we worked out some still details to try to help that process. So that's a net number that also includes a lot of work for credits and a lot of adjustments along the way. The Dixon rebuild project, we're shooting for a bid date in April. And so between now and April, we're a little nervous what will continue to happen with this market. We're doing our best to design around that and anticipate that, but it's a challenge. Same with Wasatch. We're scheduled to have a bid day sometime in May for Wasatch. And again, our discussions and our design meetings are always centered on, can we approach this a different way? Can we use a different product? Can we do this? We're constantly asking those questions. For small capital improvement projects, this escalation also has an impact. For example, if I meet with the board in February and I share with you the final list for the coming year of capital improvement projects, between February and when we actually start that project, we get a lot of fluctuation. And so that's another area that we're constantly trying to balance and manage. Okay, can you go to the next one, Bonnie? A week ago, we had a meeting with the group. Several of you were part of that meeting. It was just a design review meeting for Dixon progress. And we'll do that again 2 more times with that same group. That's separate from our normal design meetings. And I just wanted to let you know we meet weekly with our architects and engineers. We met again for several hours today. Our Dixon principal, John Anderson, was part of that again today. He's part of that every week, has his input, asks questions. So that's just a continual process. And right now there's traffic engineering reports, studies being performed, not only for Dixon, but for Wasatch surrounding areas. And again, those traffic reports will be based on specific questions sent to us from the city, so that as we work together, we're working with the city and our needs and our transportation department all at the same time. You go to the next one. And then this is basically just the same process with Wasatch. We have a meeting planned for tomorrow morning with a group. Some of you will be part of that meeting, just to hear an update from our architects for Wasatch, where we're at, where we're trying to place the building, where we are in programming and overall square footage and details like that. Okay. Go to the next slide. That's it. Any questions for me on any projects, whether they're major or capital improvement?
I
Go
do.
ahead, Nate, and then Terry.
So when we did our bond, we have a cushion in there. Is that cushion going to be able to cover it by the time we get to May?
For Wasatch and Dixon?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solid answer.
And I wish I could tell you better, Nate, but I no one dares right now commit.
Okay.
We're hoping it does.
What about Tintu? I mean, we saw that it's gone up. Where's our cushion at there?
Our original cushion for Tint View is gone.
Yeah.
And so at this point, whenever I attend a meeting, it's a constant questioning process. Every single line item, everything that gets proposed, we have to go back and just double check and triple check everything we can to figure out what we can do. That I'm probably most worried about the Tint View project because of everything happening there. Derek?
In the future, as we are kind of talking about the Tint View project and then all these other ones in the future, is it possible to take, I mean, because we can work with my department to get the progress billings, how much we've spent to date so far, but also compare that to how much of the project is estimated left to cost. So that way we can kind of see where we're projecting that how far we're going to go over, and so we can kind of make a plan around that.
Yeah, I can get that for you. Yeah, percent complete versus what's been drawn, and yeah, I can get that.
Okay.
I'll start.
We can sit down and talk to refine it to make sure.
Okay. Between our design team and our construction team, they're doing everything they can to protect us with Tint View and these other projects. But Tint View is a challenge. And we're doing our best to manage that one.
Terry, you had a question?
Yeah, have the architects been in contact with the teachers for the new middle schools yet?
Yes.
Because I know last week they said they were starting, but...
Oh, the follow-up meeting, no. They were trying to schedule it for the end of last week. They could not make that work, and so they're trying to make it for the end of this week.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be the next, thank you, that'll be the next follow-up.
And then has the Head Start, anyone from Head Start had input on the new parking lot?
Not yet. No. Our civil engineers are still working on details on that, and then as soon as they get that finalized, then we'll go back and let them see how that's been designed and let them ask questions.
So was anyone from the city included on the meeting from this morning?
No one from the city in today's meeting, but there's another meeting. So when I say we have design meetings, there's probably 5 or 6 per week. There's one tomorrow with the power department. And so for example, we'll meet with the power department tomorrow. We may meet with civil engineers in the city again Monday, and we do that multiple times with each project.
Okay. And with Wasatch being built this big, and maybe we need to talk about this as a board, should we move are the numbers artificially inflated at Wasatch? Should we move the Chinese program to another school that has a smaller population so that we can build a smaller school and this can help with construction costs?
So I can tell you that's a separate question. You guys will have to let me know on, but I can tell you this. We were going to discuss this tomorrow, but our original programming was in the 90,000 square foot range, at one point up to 97,000, and as of this week we're about just a little over 82,000 square feet, which is much closer to a Lakeview square footage with portables. And so we've shaved off a whole lot of square footage for Wasatch, but as far as questions like that, yeah, you guys will have to let me know what steps you'd like to take.
Because if it'll help with construction costs with Wasatch, since it's so vital right now,
But like,
move it to I don't know which school.
You're looking
your
at 12
kids,
classrooms.
yeah, your
so-
kids, they're in the Chinese program, they're doing Chinese, you can't just move it to a different school, because then all the kids that live in that area, they're like, what do I do? Do they all
There's
go
some
to
other
that
programs,
school?
right, like Giant Steps, that could be moved, is that correct?
Mhm. So there's other programs at Wasatch that could be moved to be able to save construction costs.
And Giant Steps, that's a good example. Right now, we have about 1,600 square feet set aside for Giant Steps program in the Wasatch plant. So if you take 1,600 square feet and you multiply that by about $315 a square foot, that's about what it would shave off.
That's all my questions.
Yes, Jennifer.
Back to Tim Pugh, just to give me an idea. I was curious, at what point in the process have we purchased all the materials we're gonna need to finish building? Like that we know, like, okay, we know where we ended up on the cost. Are we still a ways out on that?
We're still a ways out. They've pre-ordered a lot of things that they could, like mechanical units, for example. We made sure those were ordered early, so we didn't continue to see a climb with those. And our subcontractors and suppliers can store those for us without additional costs. There are some things that we just can't do until we get further along, just because of a lack of space, or else we'd be leasing large warehouses to make it work.
And I forgot the answer to this, I think I asked this before, could we buy options? And this would maybe be a Derek thing.
So, under Utah money management, we're pretty restricted as to kind of what we can do. And we can only do like a small percentage of unsecured assets. So that would be
Option, that would guarantee us our prices, but.
Yeah.
I looked into it after you, because I thought it was a great question you asked. And I looked into it, and that was, because it's kind of like an unsecured benefit, we are very limited as to how much we can put in there. Essentially, the amount we can put in there wouldn't cover even a portion of part of the project.
But if you don't sell your options, don't they deliver? That's the worry with options.
I need to change the topic for a moment. If you're finished with Mark, I wanted to just let you know that as part of the BYU purchase and sale for the Wasatch site, the city and us are still scheduled to have a conversation about what that memorandum of understanding will look like. Mark is working with Chris Hogan, our construction manager, to pull together information that we will then give to Derek Marshall, our attorney. Derek, I talked to him the other day. Derek is ready to receive that at any time. He'll put that in MOU language. He'll have a meeting with his counterpart at the city, and then we will bring that draft to you. We're planning on February 8th for the board to approve that MOU with the city, which will complete the entire transaction for the Wasatch. The remaining portion of that transaction is still dependent on us getting a few things hammered out in writing with the city. And Mark is working hard on getting that together.
And thank you, Keith. And I received those unit prices today, that menu list I mentioned to you. So I have those as of today, and I'll get that prepared and get it to you and Derek.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is a little off subject. I don't want to derail the conversation. Just putting a bug in everybody's ears that when we start making decisions about what's going to happen with the current Dixon building, that I would like to be involved in those discussions. I've heard around when people are like, they said they were going to do this with it, and I'm like, if there's conversations happening, I would very much appreciate being included.
Yeah.
We have an upcoming meeting where that's going to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously we'll be part of that committee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to think about the escalated prices, I mean, if it's from inflation, that means we're getting a bargain all along the way, because we'll be paying off with dollars that are worth a lot less. So, I mean, it's terrible right now, but
Yeah.
in the future it'll look cheap, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you, taxpayers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other further questions? All right, moving on. Thank you, Mark. Student Services Report, Doug Finch.
Thank you. The superintendent asked me to just present to you a little bit of the effort that we work on as a school district. And so I can speak specifically from what we do from Student and Family Services here at the district office as far as community outreach. It's always so important to see and assess at times what is the impact that a school district's having on the city that they serve. We are one city, one school district. There's a lot of great partnerships and relationships I've learned to grow to appreciate from having worked in other settings where it's one school district, multiple cities. So one of the things that I wanted to just capture for you, while it's not, again, something to say those numbers are hard numbers, though they appear to be very specific. In your board docs, you see a summary of the work that was orchestrated by staff in our student services department, primarily our social workers and our student and family liaisons or advocates, of working with some great partners. And so this is as much wanting to say thank you to those individuals who reach out, and we reach out to them, and they partner with us in helping families in need. You'll see some great names on that list, like the United Way of Utah County. That's the big, you can see the big ticket item there. They have got a really wonderful way that they handle the Sub Versano process and coordinate that not just within Provo but countywide. You'll also see some great partnerships there that we have with Quarters for Christmas and the Larry H. Miller Charities Foundation. Just by way of note, though, because of the changes that have gone on with the Larry H. Miller family, this might be a kind of a closing of that loop with them, and so we're seeking out and welcome to and love working with other partners who could fill those shoes. In the past, we were receiving anywhere from $10,000 to, even in good years, $20,000 from our friends in the Larry H. Miller Foundation, but we received our last designated money on our behalf for our families this year, so there's certainly a void there. We also appreciate the efforts that come from the foundation where those monies are kept in-house, like things that our foundation helps do to do outreach, like Principal's Pantry and so forth. But again, I just wanted you to get a sense of what that is, the numbers of families. And I just also wanted to point to you that while it seems like it pales in comparison to some of the other contributions, even our district office staff, in an effort and with the encouragement of the superintendent, and this is something we've repeated on multiple years, we just reached out and said, why don't we pitch in what we might to be benevolent, and maybe in lieu of gifts to each other, let's contribute something that we could make to someone we recognize as an excellent partner, and that is the Refuge, which is the women's shelter that serves a number of families in the Carterville area and other places. It's close to my heart, having been the principal at Edgemont Elementary, where these kids came to Edgemont Elementary School, and I know something of the stories associated with that. One of the situations of crisis that we dealt with at Timpview High School this year involved a family at the Refuge as well. They're wonderful to work with, and it was really humbling to take that check along with some other sundry items that we had put together and deliver that to them in time for the holidays so that they could benefit families. There was not a lot of words exchanged, but definitely looks of we're in this together, and we appreciate and we see each other as partners in serving the Provo community, no matter where they're at. So just thought, again, not an effort to try and pat ourselves on the back, but just to be really more transparent with you, to see the good work that's happening as a school district with our community partners, and then just with in-house, those that would be able to just quietly say, we want to make an effort to make a difference in the community that we serve. So any questions or comments before I conclude that? Jennifer?
Can we say the value of donations we received and families benefited for the public's benefit?
Sure, yeah. And again, I don't have it memorized in front of me. I know there's about 900 families, about 904 if you did the math on it. Thank you, Gina. And the sum total was somewhere around $61,500 worth of vouchers, gift cards, or cash donations were made to families in the Provo area during the months of November and December. So that was everything from Thanksgiving Heroes and Tabitha's Way through the November timeframe. And then, of course, December is traditionally a time when a lot of other needs are meant to support families. So thank you, Jennifer. Any other comment or question? Okay.
Thank you for all the hard work that your group does and continues, and I know this doesn't just end for November and December. This
Right.
continues on throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, as Christmas comes 12 months a year in student services, as we kind of say. There's always going to be a need. It's just not something they want a new toy for the holidays. So gratefully, with the support of the foundation and other individuals, we have great partnerships that aren't just for the holidays. So we just thought this would be a great time to get a little snapshot. And note, too, the little asterisk at the bottom, this doesn't capture what a lot of individual schools are doing as well. I know there's a tradition of doing some really outstanding things in a number of our communities, the Westridge community, the Timpview community. They do things at a site level that we don't get involved in directly with student services. So those numbers aren't even reported. So this might just be, again, a shadow of a larger effort that the schools really make a big impact in this community. It's a real treat to recognize that at times when you want to say this is meaningful work. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, policy review, superintendent.
So we have one. New policy is 6900. This is in response to a conversation we had, I'm guessing probably about 10 weeks ago. This is about funding the small schools. As you remember, we have three elementary schools in our district that have less than 400 students, or right around 400 students or less. And so the question is, it's invariably in some districts, so we're going to close a school, we're going to close a boundary, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I have actually asked that if we're not in a financial crisis in our district, that we take our time in looking at that. We give support to that school, we continue to fund them in a viable way, and we work with the principal and the leadership team of the school to maybe find ways where they can maybe reach out and draw back more students. So this policy simply outlines that it takes those ideas and puts them into writing. The board, if you look at the paragraph 3, which starts on line 23, the board can do, well, actually on line 19, the board can do any number of things. None of this restricts you, but what it does is it allows us to sit down and work with the principal, for example, and just say, let's generate some ideas together about how we might be able to boost your enrollment. And some of this might also be that patience is appropriate because there might be a housing development that is coming into a particular site, and maybe another housing development was demolished to make room for it. There can be a lot of variables that are at play here. So I just felt the need to put in writing some of the ideas. Now, we as council have perseverated on this quite a bit, and we would like to actually broaden this policy out to give a cleaner version of staffing for schools of all sizes. And I'd like to do that, but I didn't want to bog this one down and not get it done in a timely manner. I wanted to get this before you now. We can shoot holes in it if you want to, or make corrections in any way, shape, or form that we need to. I have a meeting next Wednesday afternoon with the 3 principals at those 3 schools. Alex, Jason, and maybe some other members of council will be there as well. We're going to be working on the nuts and bolts of how to implement it. That will become the procedure. So I've given all 3 of the principals a heads up that we're working on this, that we want to give them a sense of stability and confidence as they go forward, rather than constantly be worried about whether there's an axe hanging over their school's collective head. So, any questions for me on this? Go ahead.
This is kind of a loaded question or comment. But, I recognize there's no axe over anyone's head, or any school's head, but I've looked at the boundaries of particularly 2 of the schools that are on the list.
Yep.
And the way to boost one is to put the school, the community, the neighborhood back to the school that it should have gone. Anyway, so my question and my comment is, we need to be looking at boundaries and how they're drawn and how that affects these schools. And we need to be looking at the impact with the way that I feel like we've taken from one school to try and bolster another school, and now both schools are in trouble. And that is just my complete opinion. I was not on the board when any of these decisions were made, but I very much worry that that there's going to be talk about closing schools that have, in my opinion, we've poached from one school to take to another. And we need to look at that. That's just my request, is we need to look at that before we look at, and again, we're not closing schools, but I'm worried. I'm really worried.
What schools are you talking about? I haven't looked at the numbers.
Franklin and Spring Creek. What's the third one? The third one, Canyon Creek?
Our three schools are Spring Creek, Franklin, and Amelia. Amelia's hovering right around 400 right now. They've been higher. They've dropped a little this year.
I'm not too worried about Amelia. There's so many housing projects going up around that school. It's ridiculous. But I had a question. So this is a new policy category, is what I wanted to clarify, right?
Category, it's a number that hasn't existed before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I went to go look it up and I'm like, I don't see a 6,900.
Right, there isn't one.
So pretty much what this is it's a commuted sentence of 3 years. If anyone gets nervous, then they know that they got 3 years. Maybe.
Not necessarily, right?
Maybe
I mean,
even
We
more.
could do something, but it's like, hey, you probably got 3 years. Is that what it is?
I asked the same question, and I felt like the answer was more like, no, this gives us, let's take 3 years to see what we can do and reevaluate. And it's not necessarily you're toast in 3. It's more like we're going to give ourselves some time instead of just jumping to a conclusion.
A stay of execution to do research.
To reevaluate again in 3 more years. And yeah.
It sounds like you're being intentional about creating a plan to help the school.
Well, it's two plans, actually. One plan is the one that I refer to there, the other is funding. Because the funding is the thing that's really created the impetus for this discussion. If we have a school, for example, that is dropping so far down in their enrollments that they don't generate even two separate classes per grade level, then you almost go into this death spiral of the school. So we're trying to say that even though they may be below certain thresholds, we want to have as a minimum, and this is something I expect to come out in the development of the procedure, as a minimum what that funding will be. So so 2 classes per grade level all the way through, those kinds of things. Just so we can count on certain funding levels.
Doesn't this take us back to the bigger problem of class sizes and paying teachers more? Because if we're going to pay teachers more, we probably have to increase class sizes. And to do that, you can't have these little schools that have really small class sizes because we want to keep 2 teachers in there. And so you're talking about boundary changes because then you have to shift people into more schools. It's a whole, it seems like it's a series of cascading events. If we want to pay teachers more and have larger class sizes, it's going to necessitate cutting some schools, right?
I think it's connected to that conversation for sure, but the one thing that it does, it means that we will attempt to provide support for that school as well to get them up to maybe we do a marketing plan. I've met with Jason Benson a couple of times down at Franklin about possibly doing a different kind of STEM approach, something that will really intrigue the community or whatever the thing might be. So just kind of giving the community a sense of this school is wanting to attract students, and here are some ideas for how we do that. And I think, to Gina's point, nothing in here means that we can't have a conversation about possibly redrawing boundaries within the school.
No, and I knew that. I was just saying to everyone who's going to be working on it, I don't know who those people are, but we're closing lots of schools in Central Provo.
Yeah.
And we're poaching from Central Provo, in my opinion, and that needs to be looked at before we start talking about closing more schools in Central Provo.
Fair enough.
I was just going to say, Gina and I were part of the council level PTA meeting today, and even though it was on the agenda, they brought this up generally about just their frustration with some of these schools where parents are choosing to choice into charters or other schools in our district, and they don't recognize all the benefits of a Franklin and a Spring Creek and all the good things that are happening at that school. And so I definitely think that the communications, the marketing should definitely be a part of those plans of how do we get that message out to those families and bring back some of them to choice out.
Right.
Yeah.
One of our challenges, of course, is that there's this myth around here that charter schools are good and public schools like the ones we run are bad. You may want to talk to Jill Franklin about some of the challenges that she has faced with some of those myths on the southeast corner program.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this is just to be able to have a series of steps that we know that we're able to take to be able to address these issues. So that's why we created the policy.
Are there any further questions about this policy? Okay, so we will be bringing this to the business meeting tonight to deal with.
Thank you.
Okay, plans for graduation, Todd McKee.
Joining you here at the table. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what seems to be our ever-shifting plans for graduation. Let me start by saying simply that we're kind of the victim of our own success in some ways. Going back 2 years ago, our schools worked really hard in the midst of a pandemic to make sure that our seniors felt appreciated for the work that they did. And they implemented a drive-through graduation ceremony, and that was a huge success in the community from all accounts. And there was a real question about, well, what are we going to do for an encore? What are we going to do the following year to match that? And there was some pressure to go back to the drive-through. And our schools, again, in the midst of the pandemic, wanting to honor our seniors and working with them, came up with holding graduation on the stadium fields. And again, that they really went to great lengths to honor those kids. I thought they did an exceptional job last year, above and beyond, I think, even some of our own expectations. So now the question is, what are we going to do for this year? And our principals have continued to work with our senior class officers to try to determine what they can do or what we should do. Some of the challenges and some of the shifting that is taking place that's making this a bit of a challenge for us. First is obviously the construction at Timpview. The Timpview principal has indicated he just doesn't see how we could pull off a graduation at that site this spring with all the construction that's taking place. So there was some thinking amongst the group that, as I worked with the two of them, of going to our original plan prior to the pandemic, which was the Marriott Center. But if you've been paying attention more recently, we understand that the university has come out with new policy requiring any group over 100 to either show proof of vaccination or have received a negative test result. And so that really has kind of shifted our thinking, wondering what in the world are we going to be able to do for graduation this spring. Meeting with them this morning, again, we're still kind of in the process, and they're going back and talking with their senior class officers. It's really coming down to potentially 2 paths, and we're not sure. Each of them is somewhat, we're unsure at this point which direction will be the best. But to share with you the thinking currently, one is that Provo High would hold their graduation on their field as they did last year, and that we would reach out to BYU and see if their new requirements apply to outdoor activities, and to seek permission to rent the old Provo High Stadium potentially for Timpview. So that's one path that we're pursuing. The other, and this again, each of them have their drawbacks, and this one may have a little bit more. But when they suggested it, I readily connected my own experience having done this in a prior district. The thinking is Provo would hold their graduation on their stadium, and then the following night Timpview would do the same in that same stadium. Now there's some challenges with that around culture and do you change the green to the orange and all those kinds of things. Having lived through that, it is doable. It is very much doable. But it will take a little bit of work on the part of the school, I think, going forward with the community. And in hindsight, really it comes down to, that student hearing their name as they walk across the stage and their parents being able to feel that sense of pride. So right now, those are the two directions that we're kind of pursuing and trying to understand what the possibilities are. We'll continue to update the board as the plans start to firm. At this point, any questions, comments, concerns? Yes?
Inclement weather.
Always a concern in May, and last year we were forced to devise a plan B, which was to default into the gym, and I imagine that would again be the case this year. If we, on either case, we'd have to find an indoor location.
UVU is not an option?
We're looking into that potentially. We're not holding out great hope on that because the other two districts, UVU is feeling the pressure from the other two districts and all their schools to do the same. And the challenge with the way the other districts run their graduation, they schedule not only for the graduation ceremony, but they also ask for time for practice. And so the schedule for the UVU Center gets consumed very quickly, and we're somewhat late to the table on this. So we're looking into it, but we're not holding our breath.
Are they actually allowing it, though? They're allowing people to come in for
Well,
ceremonies?
that's a good question. At this point, they haven't made a statement, and there is that lingering question. We discussed this morning that if BYU, the University of Utah, and some of these others have moved in this direction, will others follow them? And so that's a very likely possibility.
Well, it's state law, right? Like, they can't do anything unless the Utah County people go that direction.
Yeah, I don't know how they're. I mean, the University of Utah, obviously, Salt Lake County's in a mask mandate. I don't know about requiring vaccination or proof of a negative test. BYU, obviously, being a private entity, they can do whatever they choose to do. So I really don't have a response. It could be very well defaulting to the county.
Does it seem like they're going to choose around the same starting time as last year, or if they adjusted based on what they learned last year?
That's part of our conversation, is what would be the ideal time, particularly if it's outdoors. So there were lessons learned, obviously, from our experience last year. So right now we haven't determined a time. Sorry.
Well, good luck with that.
We all could use a little luck right now, couldn't we? Thank you.
All right. Next, along with graduation, we also have graduation speakers. Looking at those dates, starting on May 19th for adult ed, May 24th for Provo High, May 25th for Timpview, May 26th for Independence, and October 5th for fall graduation. And then remind me, didn't we do one in the spring too?
For
what did you just speak at?
That was fall.
Oh, that was fall.
That was fall.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just like.
We barely just got done with the fall.
Thank you.
Like,
Like, I know you just spoke at one. So, anyway, is there any? I know some of you have graduating students. Are you wanting to speak at your own child's graduation? That was last year.
That was last year. I know, a whole year's gone by.
A whole year's gone by.
I would like to take Provo for that.
Okay,
For
so
that reason.
Rebecca's Provo.
I would be fine to take Timpview. I do have a graduate, but I spoke at Provo High last year, so that's when I'm feeling strongly.
You have a graduate.
Thanks.
Is IHS really on Sunday? Sorry, IHS graduation. Oh, I'm looking at 2023. Never mind.
Okay. Okay, so Jennifer, you'll do Timpview.
Okay.
All right, I spoke with McKay earlier, and he was fine to take any of them. So we can just assign him to which one. Nate, you didn't get to speak this last time.
I was going to say, who was off last year?
Nate and McKay were both off.
Well, I'm good either way. You send me
Is there one you would have a preference for?
I'm good with it.
Do Independence if they do it in their backyard, because it's nice there.
So, you
Well,
want
they
to
have
do
a nice backyard, then
Okay.
I'm down for that one.
So Nate, you'll do Independence?
Yeah.
Okay, so McKay
May
gets adult ed.
26th.
I'll give McKay adult ed. And rock, paper, scissors for fall graduation between the three of us, or does anyone prefer to?
I don't have a preference.
I don't have preference.
I don't either. So, Terry, would you like to speak?
Sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, and we'll always, if things come up, we can rearrange things and if needed in the future, but thank you for that. Okay.
And I should probably add, I don't think any of this committee's graduation dates will be changing, but given how fluid everything is right now, just be prepared for us to have to let you know if something does change, either dates or times. They've got to be pretty firm fairly soon because people will be planning on coming from out of town. So I'm just saying this just as a precaution.
Okay. Next, we're going to have a discussion on benefits for employees. Derek Anderson.
Okay. Let me pull it back. Thank you. What I'm asking the board to do is consider allowing us to go out and look at hiring a consultant to take our insurance to self-funding. And if you go to the next slide, Bonnie. So here's kind of the way insurance kind of works. Like right now, we pay about $23,000 a year for a family, okay? And what that happens is that full amount goes into what is called our premiums that we pay, and whether that family utilizes the full $23,000 or not is irrelevant in this case. So if they only use, say, $5,000, the remaining amount just disappears, okay? And so the way the fully insured is over the course of the year we end up paying about $13 to $14 million in premiums, okay? So, and it's just paid, we pay it, and there's no chance of ever seeing any portion of that back or as ours. By moving to self-funding, okay, what happens is you buy stop loss, and you buy stop loss at the individual level and at the organization level, okay? Then what you're going to have is you have like a claims administrator where we don't have the team to handle all the claims that are coming in and how they should get paid and whatnot, right? We just don't have that capacity, so you hire a third party to handle that, okay? So then that takes a layer off. Then you have your expected claims and the actual claims that come in, okay? Then what happens is if it's coming in less, then all of this is savings that you get to utilize and keep, and essentially is yours, and it builds a fund balance to protect yourself as a reserve, or to possibly look into the future if you've had numerous years that are like this, to possibly say, hey, maybe we want to adjust, you know, our benefits and offer more, you know, benefits, so that way, you know, people have better coverage or things like that, okay? And so that's kind of at a high level, self-funding at a glance. You go to the next one, Bonnie. Okay, so here's an explanation kind of the way our current structure is. So right now, this is kind of our base year. Let's consider this year, okay? The way our contracts are currently written is we have an automatic 2.5% escalation. And then after the contract is up, then they'll reevaluate and say, well, we're going to keep hitting you with 2.5%, or we're going to do a one-time 10% adjustment, and then go forward, we'll do these again. So that's kind of, and what happens is it's an automatic jump, okay, regardless of what our claims are. So if our claims are always below this base year amount, what will end up happening is we'll automatically pay more and more and more and never see anything back on that, okay?
Is the 2.5% set?
This is it set in contract, in our contract right now. Yep. And so if you go to the next slide, Bonnie. Oh, we go in order. Did I not put that? This is the one I want to go to right here. So if you look at this, this is an analysis that GBS put together. So if you look at this right here, they say, okay, if we look back 4 years, you would have saved $2.5 million here by self-funding, estimated self-funding costs, actually fully insured premium. So we would have saved $2.5 million that year. We would have saved 1.8 million, 2 million, 1.2 million, okay, for a total of accumulation $7.7 million. Okay, so if you go back 3 slides, Bonnie, to that circled graph, this one, this is essentially exactly what's happened. They've escalated this up every year, even though our claims have stayed down below. Okay, and so what I am asking you, so if you go over, to go down one more slide, sorry, Bonnie, go to the next one. So, and here's kind of the way it works: is doctors have a profit layer, hospitals have a profit layer, insurance companies have a profit layer, and then the brokers have their profit layer built in. What we're doing is we're essentially eliminating some of these layers and taking it on ourselves. And so what I mean, as you see that from that analysis, that's what they're showing on that one. I believe it could be more, because if you go to the next slide, Bonnie, I believe we could easily save a bunch of money in pharmacy too. That is not in here because of the way that Select Health is tied their pharmacy in. The rates that we're paying are much higher than we can do when we separate the medical and the pharmacy together and break them out against and bid them out. So what you do is you bid out every separate part of your plan. So you bid out the health insurance, you bid out the pharmacy, you bid out the stop loss. Essentially you're bidding everything out to try to get the best rates possible. Questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Terry.
So, I don't know if you've looked into this yet for this, but has the COVID medical care increased any costs at all?
So that's included in here.
The medical claim part?
Yep, that's all included in there.
Okay. And then this kind of goes along with the warrant reports, so we're going to do 2 things at once. I noticed on pages 2 and 14 it says Select Health was paid over $1 million and United Healthcare was paid over $87,000, and this is per month. So how much would it cost per month? Because as a board we have to approve these financial reports every single month. So next year, if we're on this new plan, how much is it going to cost per month?
So until we actually go out to bid and hire a broker and we start putting things out to bid, we won't know that until that actually happens. So this is kind of giving you a very high overlay of what I want to take us to do, and then essentially if the board is okay with me exploring this route, then we would go and put it out to bid for as a broker to come in, take all of our claims, run through their analysis, and we'd have all these different brokers essentially pitching Jason's department and me, you know, how they plan to structure this and what the costs are going to look like.
Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
Is there any history in the other districts that you've talked to about HMOs or service providers penalizing districts who go this route? Like they'd rather deal with an HMO or some big structure rather than deal with piece by piece with individual districts?
So I've yet to encounter a district that has moved to self-funding that has not saved money.
So I guess going along with his question, mine goes along with that. Would they be able to still go to the healthcare choice that they want to?
So that's
actually open up to more healthcare choices?
This would do multiple factors. Is it would you offer. So there's a couple things. There's called a disruption report, right? So based off of the plans that are end up being selected, there's what we call it's called a disruption report to see who would actually be impacted by any kind of switches. The other thing you do is you can offer multiple different tiers of plans to allow people to say, look, I want this plan because this plan has the doctors I want to go see, and this plan over here doesn't. And so, or you give people options to choose. So that way there's minimal impact. I just got done talking with a business administrator who they're self-funding, and it's given them a ton of options. They just rolled out this year, just recently, they just barely went out and met with everybody, that they're paying 100% of diabetic insulin. Right, and that's what you can do when you are self-funding. You don't have those kinds of options by doing what we're doing.
Okay, so I'm not good with understanding insurance at all, but, so if I'm understanding right though, even though we're self-funding, they're still on some kind of plan that they're getting discounts at pharmacies,
Correct.
going to the doctor, all of that.
Absolutely correct. So what happens is you actually, we would actually, as we go out and bid this whole thing out, one of the things that you bid out is, okay, how much would it cost to get access to the Blue Cross Blue Shield network or the PEHP network? You can go and shop those different networks to see what are the best discounts you're going to get, what's the best access you're going to get, and so then you can make a decision based on that. The other thing would be is kind of the same thing with pharmacies. You go and you can essentially bid out the different pharmacy networks, and because you're joining a network that has already got a huge book of business, that gives you access to those discounts.
Okay, so my other question is going to be about risk to us, but is the risk still with those networks that only join?
So they don't carry any of the risk. All we're doing is saying we're paying a fee to get access to their network. We are self-funding, so we are paying 100% of our claims, and then that's what you do is you layer on stop loss. So the stop loss insurance prevents, so say you have an individual that gets in a car wreck, and it's, 3-4 months in the hospital, all huge medical bills, right? So what you can do is you layer on stop loss at the individual level and the organization level. So say an individual hits that threshold, and let's say it's $250,000, we would pay the first $250,000 in claims, and then anything above that, the stop loss picks up. And then at the organizational level, say we have our stop loss set at 15 million, and our typical claims are running at 13 million. What would happen is if it was a big year, we'd run up to the 15 million, that one would trigger, and then that would cover everything else. So there's layers of protection that you can build in to prevent it from wiping you out.
So Derek, it would make sense that the person negotiating with different doctors or whomever networks would be doing so more on a local basis than for example, a regional or national basis. If that's true, then how would this impact out-of-state travel and accidents that happen beyond the borders of the state?
Yep. So that's the great thing about kind of self-funding is if you go to say depending on what network you do, you also can kind of tailor, if there's how much is going to be paid out of network versus in network. You can tailor those things and have the option to build it out. At the same time as if you say you do the Blue Cross Blue Shield network or the Cigna network or the Aetna network, whatever it comes in as the best option, you have access to all of those nationwide people who are under accepting that network. And then if say you happen to go somewhere that wasn't in that, let's say Cigna network, we could still accept and have some portion that is considered an out-of-network option.
I want, Lindsay, what do you think from the union standpoint?
I think we need to explore this. Because I also looked at this and it's a very surface level. And I don't feel like, I think right now Derek's asking us to make a decision of can we fund exploring this? Not that we're making a decision, yes, we're going to this. And I think we definitely need to do that.
Wouldn't we save some money because we're pretty young? Our workforce is pretty young.
So yeah, if your workforce is younger, it typically your claims run not as hot, and so that would go into our favor.
And would we just share administrators like with whoever is running Nebo and Alpine? Is it just like a company that we just become their clients and we kind of go with them, like the administrator?
Yes, yes.
Because there's that administrative fee. Is that just like a company that does that?
Bingo, correct.
And they probably do a lot of different districts, and we would just join with them, and they handle all the claims.
Yep.
Sorry, I missed the beginning, so I don't know if you addressed this or not, but this saves the district money overall, but how about like down on the individual level? Like, are we gonna see, are employees gonna see like a massive increase in their copay? Or like, you know, how does that all play out for the individual?
So that comes back also to plan design. So we have the ability to kind of adjust all those things. And this is my belief, is that if say we go through this analysis and they say, yeah, we could save you money, but you're going to have to ratchet, everyone's going to have to pay, you know, $600 a month, and everyone, you know, and this is going to be your out-of-pocket maximum is 10 grand or whatever, then that just doesn't make sense. You just kill it. I don't foresee that happening. Almost every district I know of that's self-funding has an option of 100% covered, meaning the employee pays $0 for their premium.
So 2 questions. First one is, along with lines with CERT, can there be an FSA still?
Yep.
And that would just be the certain plan, whatever you decide to choose.
Yep. So if you have a traditional plan, an FSA is optional, is open to you. If you have an HSA plan, if I'm remembering this right, an FSA is not available. Right. Okay. And so that's, I mean, it just depends on what type of.
So there's still a lot of options out there as far as this gives us some. Okay. So my second question is how much is it going to cost us as a district to hire a consultant to decide?
That's what we won't know until we actually put that out to bid. So that would be what I would do, is the way I would structure this is, because we have the ability to direct negotiate with this service provider, what we would do is invite multiple service providers to come in. We'd previously give them our claims reports and say, here's our claims reports. You run your analysis. We want you to come and present to our team what you think we can save by going to self-funded, how you would piece this together, how you would ensure continuity of our wellness program and benefit, and you know, pharmacy and, you know, things like that. Show us our disruption reports, and then also tell us how much you want to do this. One of the things, and I didn't even touch on this, is I would require any broker that comes in to only accept our piece in terms of what we pay. What we pay is all you earn off of this whole transaction. You cannot earn a overrides, kickback, or commission from any of these outside insurance companies and things like that. If there's any discounts that are given, they come back to us, and so that's would be written into whatever contract is out there. Because that's right here. This contract is written, if you go back to previously, one more, this contract that we're currently in, they get a percentage based off of the billings. And so as this automatically ratchets up, so does the amount that they get.
Do you need a vote from us?
I don't need a vote. All I just need to know is if there's anybody that is against this, if nobody's against this, then we'll just move forward. And then when we get a bid or things like that, and we have something that's more firm, then that would be coming back to the board saying, all right, this is kind of what things are like, this is what we'd like to do, and then can we get your approval at that point in time?
I say move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, COVID update. Superintendent.
Oh yeah, this is a fun one. So I submitted something into board docs for you to have a look at. Our challenges are right now, it's not just COVID that we're dealing with. We're dealing with RSV, we're dealing with seasonal flus. We have a number of folks throughout the district, both students and staff, who are out. And we haven't seen a mask mandate in this county yet, but I know that over the weekend when we were up at the Utah School Boards Association meeting, Salt Lake County implemented one. So one of our concerns is that that there are a lot of assumptions being made about if somebody is sick, they have COVID. That's not really what we're hearing from the health department. But we do have a number of individuals, more and more individuals, who are going and getting tested, and unfortunately there's so many false negatives on the testing that folks are going back and waiting another day or two to get additional tests. And I'm aware that that happened. You need to know that today Provo High School had one administrator, their principal, who was on site. The others started the day not on site. Todd worked with some other administrators in the city and moved some people around, and then eventually Mary James did come back, and she worked out of her office. Was fairly isolated at the school that day. But one of the concerns that we're having right now is that the number of staff who are missing due to illness, we're getting close to the threshold of not being able to run school, not being able to run child nutrition, not being able to run transportation. Can be any number of those things which we're contending with. And so in the write-up that I gave you, the number one thing for you to know, to tell people when they say, well, I'm looking at that COVID chart on your website and it's not changing significantly. Well, we're putting the numbers in there in an accurate fashion. But the fact is, there are a number of individuals who they go and get a test that may say that they're positive, but in most individual tests you do not have to submit to the state, so they don't get included in the state's dashboard. Adults are not included in the state's dashboard this year. That's correct, isn't it, Jason?
I believe so.
Yeah, I remember that being the case at the beginning of the year. And then we have a number of individuals who go through alternate testing routes where they simply, we don't collect that data. It's not submitted into REDCap, and so if we go through a legitimate source for doing testing, it is included, but it is not if we just go and buy a handheld test at home, and those, whether somebody enters that data into the state system is entirely optional, and I have heard that it's quite difficult to do, although I haven't done that. So our concern is that there may be people making assumptions about that every time somebody goes home with an illness, it's COVID. This is not to minimize the impact of COVID or the new variant that's out, but it is just to say that there are other things going on, and we need to be a little more careful about the assumptions that we're making. So the fact is sick, and if somebody's not at school, it doesn't really, honestly, it doesn't really matter whether it's COVID or RSV or anything else. The fact is they're not able to be at school. This is not like, for example, you heard in the news that Chicago Teachers Union, this is not a work to rule kind of thing on behalf of an association. These are the fact that we've got good people who work here in Provo, and they are not well, and they feel that they can't come to school if they're sick. So one of the challenges is what happens if and when we get to the point where a given school cannot operate. Now, people like Alex and Jason and others in council will, as well as the principal, we will try our best to try to get additional people there, whether it's parents or move people from other schools over there or whatever. But sometimes it's not possible. I heard yesterday, although I did not confirm, that we were one missing bus driver away from being unable to run student transportation yesterday.
I talked to Troy today, and we talked about this. Essentially, every day is day to day down there, because you have either a driver sick or subs that don't answer the phone. I mean, it's just almost daily that we're having to pull from the front office to run routes.
So we're going to do a better job. You can see in the bullet points down below on this particular sheet, we're going to do a better job of promoting the use of N95 masks. They are better than just a cloth mask or a paper mask. They do have more filter abilities. And the second bullet there, I don't want this. I don't want the phone calls. I don't want to be called the names. I don't. But I don't know a way that we can do what we did last year, which was when we see a threshold coming, we call a board meeting in a few days and we have a lengthy discussion, and then the board decides to go a direction. I think if we're going to be able to be responsive at the drop of a hat, I've got to have the authority to make a call that a school may need to go online for a few days. Now, I don't want to make that call on my own. I don't have a medical degree, so I'm not comfortable making that by myself, but I would make it in consultation with council, with the principal, with the health department. And I feel like we would have pretty good security about that we're doing things right if that were the case. I hope we don't have to go there, but one of our challenges is it might be the night before, it might be the morning of. We get phone calls and there's 12 teachers at Provo High School who say, I can't come in, I'm sick. Now, we know we don't have to keep people out for 5 days. That's one of the reasons why I'm saying 2 or 3 days. We would potentially go online learning for a period of time, and then that would come off. Or at least after a couple of days, we would reevaluate and see where we are then. Anyway, so this is probably a harder year than last year, because I think so many people are weary of COVID. They're weary of masks. I just read something today, Anne-Marie sent it to us. 25% of superintendents in this country are resigning and just saying, I'm done, I'm out of here. And I'm a little more stubborn than that right now, but you never know what will happen in the future. So I don't really want this authority. I'd rather give it to the board, but I don't think that we can gather a quorum together fast enough to be able to respond to these needs that may arise. The last thing I'll say is, and I mentioned it on here, we would deal with this on a school-by-school basis as opposed to a district-wide basis. So if we know, for example, that school X has a particular problem today, but the school next door to it may not have that problem, then it will only be school X that goes online. So I'm ready to answer questions. Go ahead. If you want to say, I don't want to give you this authority, Keith, I will thank you.
And that's why you get paid the big bucks
Yeah,
for it.
right.
I think this is necessary. I think the big thing that we need to do is communication with our community. I think if we send out something, a really good letter explaining the situations we're in, because it's not necessarily due to sicknesses, you know, it's COVID, this is due to lack of staff and lack of other things. If there's good communication given throughout the whole district, I think when this happens, it's not unexpected.
We stand a better chance.
Yeah.
I agree. I wanted to say the same thing. Like, should we send out some information now and say this may be coming?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to freak people out too early, but that may not be a bad idea. But also, the first thing that came to my mind when thinking of this is Chromebooks. Are we sending home elementary school Chromebooks on a daily basis now, just to make sure if this really does go down at the drop of a hat that the kids have what they need?
I think they brought them back to school now. We've sent home the charges, so really all we need to do is get a message out to say that this is possible and likely.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the reasons why I don't really want to be making the call in the morning. I'd rather make it the night before, if possible. But we all know of situations where a teacher has woken up, or maybe some of us have woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning. We've got a sore throat. We didn't when we went to bed. Therefore, we know what decision is going to be made.
Well, if it's snow, it's one thing, but when it's...
Right, snow's a little bit more predictable, it feels
people,
like.
people could come pick up their Chromebooks that day in the morning. It's,
That's true.
some staff could be at school to distribute or something.
I don't know that we have everything hammered out on this. I will tell you that, and I mentioned it here, we talked about it the other day, I've asked Doug to see if it's possible that we can move, rather have one central testing location to put testing into each school every day, so that people who want to get a test can simply go down to the office or to the designated location and do the test with our staff.
Wait, when you say people, you mean
our
students and staff? Okay.
So anyone could go get tested?
Yeah.
But not just anyone in the community, just students?
Just students
Okay.
and staff. That's what we have the test for.
Would we need parent consent in order to do that?
Maybe. I don't know. We haven't thought through that far.
Do we have enough tests to do that?
According to Derek, we do, but, I mean, every day I get emails from vendors saying, buy some more rapid tests from us or whatever, so we can get access to them.
Okay.
I get emails also monthly from the state asking if we need to place an order because they are taking such orders every month from districts to replenish what they have. But we have a lot, so we're good right now.
Okay. Jennifer?
If we're down a bus driver or two, do we have plans in place of how, because I know in Jordan, I think that happened recently, and they just did extra routes and some kids are just late for school. Do we have plans so we don't have to close because of buses?
Yeah, if we get to the point where we are down, we'll have to make a call, kind of doing a late run. Right now, we haven't ever had that. We've had the ability to pull from people in even other departments. So like my assistant has her CDL, and there's been times where I've had her go out and hit a bus, run this route. So we've been okay, and we haven't had to do that. We have had to cut back on activities, and we've been, saying, hey, we don't have the ability to do that. That has happened. But for the core functioning of things, we've been able to do it. But yes, there are plans in terms of we may need to revisit just to button up the communication of when that will happen. But I can revisit. But I do know we do have those in place. It's just I don't know exactly the right protocol and what triggers that.
So let me get this right. So the health clerks and the school nurses and the athletic trainers already have a stack of COVID tests that students and staff can go to them right now and go get tested?
No, but we can make them available.
Starting tomorrow?
No. Starting soon. Doug is working on the deployment and the system to staffing it. But we don't have a date yet for that, but we're trying to get that happening ASAP.
We're working on it with the nurses, but we're not to that level yet, so that's some of the communication we're having with them since the conversation with Keith yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I misled you, I didn't mean to, but yeah, we're not quite ready for that, but we're working to get this in place as soon as we can.
Jennifer?
So I know one concern with elementary families is on online learning days, it's really hard for some students just because it's, what is it called, asynchronous learning, right? Has there been any talk of maybe having the elementaries giving teachers the leeway or idea to have synchronous where they're like, hey, at 9 a.m. we're going to get together, we're going to have a lesson for 30 minutes and kind of guide some of that learning on those days?
I haven't been part of any conversation. Emery, are you aware of that at all, Alex?
We have not. I appreciate the point and think it's worthy of a conversation if we need to change our approach. Jason was involved in the initial agreement with teachers on how the learning would occur on remote days. So I think that their association would need to be consulted. But I appreciate the point and I wish we could do something like that.
We even kicked around the idea yesterday in the council meeting about would it be possible to leave the schools open and staffed at a lower level, and therefore students could come to school and get some instructional experiences on those days. We haven't got that resolved yet, but that has been on the table as something we're trying to figure out if we can do.
How do you decide who comes and who doesn't? Is it just based on need? If you need daycare, basically you can come in.
We would have to hammer those out, but that's my thought is that we'd simply say if you don't have the ability to do it at home, you can drop the children off here. But it's hard to say whether or not we can actually accommodate that. But it's something that we kind of play with because we recognize with X number of teachers not in the school, and if they are truly sick, then they may not be able to really run a viable online learning class as it is.
True.
There's no good answers on this one.
So are we voting on this one, or are we just giving you direction?
I'm just asking if you have any objection, let me know. But otherwise, I think I think the smart thing would be for you to defer to granting me this ability. And if you want to put a caveat on it to say, Keith, please, you know, if you have to make this decision, just make sure you communicate this with the board. I mean, I would do that anyway, but I'd be happy to include that as a caveat.
I would just appreciate communication, but I didn't doubt you would anyway, so.
Yeah. You should.
When Edgewood did it, it went great. I mean, I think parents understand. Everyone knows everyone has COVID right now. I mean, you just look around.
Or something.
Yeah, or something.
But if we can get something out to the entire
Yeah.
district, this could happen. Like, it's just, it will help alleviate some of the phone calls and such that we'll all get.
Yeah.
So we'll aim for, and when I say we, I mean Caleb, we'll aim to get something out to the community tomorrow. He's doing another communication tomorrow midday or mid-morning. Probably by midday we'll try to get something out to the general public.
Okay. Any
Okay.
further questions about COVID?
Tiffany's getting close, right?
They all are.
Well, at least officially, officially Tiffany was close.
And test to stay is still an option. The big challenge, of course, is, and Jason mentioned this earlier, if it's not a school-related contact, the health department is not counting that as being to put us into a test to stay protocol.
And they have to hit 2%, and I think they're like just over 1% right now.
Between 30 and 40?
One of our elementary schools.
They're 30 plus, but.
One of our elementary schools has well over 100 students who are off right now with illnesses, but again, the health department has deemed that most of those illnesses are contacts that are not related to school.
I'm going to move items L and M to the business meeting, and we'll continue that discussion in there. So is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Okay. So if you're over there, we'll hopefully take a quick break, and we'll start up at 7:05. Huh?
No board member.
Yeah, I told them.